Hi, I'm Dr. Steve Vargo. I am the optometric practice management consultant with iDoc, and I have the pleasure of having Dr. Michael Zolman here with me. Dr. Zolman's an iDoc member from South Carolina.
That's right.
He is also the owner of Infinity Eye Care in Charleston, South Carolina. And more importantly, Dr. Zolman is also involved in some legislation in his state involving online refractions and kiosks. So thanks for joining us, Dr. Zolman. And if you could, just ask you to spend a few minutes telling us a little bit about what's going on in South Carolina.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, I'm on the South Carolina Optometric Physicians Association Board of Directors. I'm currently the legislative chair. And last year, we were very fortunate. We were working on an effort to come up with the Eye Care Consumer Protection Act that would basically do a number of things within our state. One of the concerns we had was the quote-unquote online eye exam. We felt that it was certainly not an eye exam by any means, and so we felt we need to protect our patients and come up with some language to basically kind of set it in stone of what an actual eye exam is. So we did a little work, and we worked with the AOA, and we were able to come up with some language that clearly defined what an eye exam is. We worked on that last year, and fortunately, we had enough of a grassroots effort with our legislation to unanimously get that language passed. Unfortunately, though, it was vetoed by our governor, Nikki Haley, at the time, and it took over a little bit unprecedented, but we were able to override the governor's veto, and we were able to get our legislation turned into law. So we're very fortunate for that, and that all happened last year.
Great. Why was it vetoed by Governor Haley?
You know, that's a good question. We don't exactly know. We tried several different times to sit down with her, approach her, to discuss what our bill does and what it doesn't. Unfortunately, she was under the impression that it kind of it blocked or stifled the progression of technology, which in actuality, it didn't do that at all. It just based the law that we came up with. It just it more or less defined what that eye exam is. And unfortunately, with the way the technology is, the online eye exam is not an eye exam. And so the way that we wrote our legislation, it's not possible to get a prescription for eyeglasses or contacts without also simultaneously having a comprehensive ocular health exam as well.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting when you say it's not an eye exam. To me, a lot of this has always seemed like a perception issue.
Yeah.
There's no comparison between if I were to go to your office and get an eye exam, a full comprehensive eye exam by a licensed professional, versus an online refraction or going through an app. There's no comparison, but I think the concern is, does the general public know that? And that's where, I think we can agree that not all technology is bad, but at the point where it threatens public safety, at the point where perhaps there's some misleading marketing around it, I think that's where legislation and people like yourself need to step in. I hosted a dinner meeting about a month ago, and I asked the group what their biggest concerns were as far as threats go, what the biggest threats they saw were, and the hands started going up with internet and online refractions. And there's no question technology, as we know, is going to continue to change. The healthcare delivery model is going to continue to change. But where do you see the trends going in terms of, let's say, telemedicine, or more specifically, even online refractions, which have grown in popularity?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly a concern that I think our profession has. I mean, certainly there is that knee-jerk reaction of, oh my gosh, what is this? We're all going to go out of business, kind of a mentality. But even when we think back to 20 years ago when LASIK was becoming a thing, we all thought we were going to lose our jobs that way too, as far as everyone's going to have LASIK and there's not going to be eye care professionals, optometrists anymore. But, I don't really think that's the way that the trend is going to go. I think there is certainly a place for telemedicine within the healthcare system. But as far as how it can be applied to eye care, I think that that's going to be way down the road. I don't see, as of now, how you can do both an online refractive prescription as well as maintain that you're maintaining the standard of health of what an eye care professional can give in their office through some kind of an app. It's just not there now. Where it's going to go in the future, your guess would be as good as mine. But as far as optometrists, I mean, we should own this technology. We should be the forefront. Who knows this? Who knows eye care better than we do? Mm-hmm. So how we integrate ourselves into that technology, I mean, that's what will remain to be seen in the next couple of years.
Yeah. I would tend to agree. I think there's enough differentiation between what we bring as far as all the service components attached to that and what you get in an online refraction. I just think there's a lot of progress to be made in terms of awareness and education. Right. Legislation is obviously one way to fight back against some of these things. But in terms of the OD's ability, because I think that's their concern, is how is this going to impact me and my practice in the future of eye care? Aside from legislation, what would you suggest an OD could be doing more to inform and educate his patient base and his community about these differences, the difference between a full comprehensive eye exam versus a patient who might want to go to the some kind of website where you can get an online refraction?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're kind of nailing the nail on the head there with, part of the misconception probably it does stem from us. We've probably not done the best job as far as educating our patients exactly what we're doing during an exam. The majority of our patients, they'll come in and they're just really looking for a prescription to get the glass or contacts renewed, or they just want to see better. And, we're certainly happy to provide that service. But all the while, as we're looking at ocular eye health, we're not probably doing the best job telling them that exactly what we're doing as we're looking at the front of the eye, as we're looking at the dilated retina. And so educating the patient a little bit better while they're in our chair, I think, is what we need to work on a lot better as a profession.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. I know you can't speak for all the states, but I think there's several others, 10, 11, 12, that are involved with similar legislation. So I know you can't speak for all those states, but I'm curious from your experience working in South Carolina, how successful do you think other states will be? And maybe some of that based on your experience. Certainly through this process, you've experienced some pushback from legislature and also aspects of it that they understood and were willing to buy into, so to speak. So what is your impression of the level of success other states will have? And then do you see this becoming momentum being built here, and this eventually, can we expect these laws to become common in more states, in most states?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess South Carolina is kind of on the right side of the curve, I guess, and the fact that when we were going for this legislation, there were 5, maybe 6 other states at the time that had either just passed similar legislation or working on it at the same time we were. And as of the 2017 session, I know that there's 10, maybe 11 other states that are currently and actively hoping to get their similar legislation passed as well. So, one of the good things that we had on our side was the fact that there were a handful of other states that did have legislation already in place. So it's not like we were just coming up with something from scratch. And I think as more states are able to successfully get their legislation in order, I think that we will see that momentum because, when we all step back from it and we all look at, what this is, it's not really it doesn't really have anything to do with, protecting our interests and that sort of thing. It really comes down to patient health. it comes down to what we can do to safeguard and protect our patients. And as we all have graduated from optometry school, we all take that oath to protect our patients above and beyond any type of personal interest. And so when we keep that in mind, I think that that really does go a long way in the eyes of legislation and our legislators when they finally understand what it is that we're trying to do. We're not trying to prevent business, but we want to make sure that our patients, their constituents, have adequate and good eye health and vision.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I would agree. I think there is a lot of passion behind these efforts with people like yourself and the profession in general, that can, override some of the concerns that this is just out of self-interest.
Right.
I think there's a lot of, I think you told me that before, when you really honestly, passionately can get behind this, both individually and as a group, I think that really helps push an agenda forward. The technologies, I think, we can agree, it's kind of good until it's bad in terms of medical care sometimes. And on some levels, again, we're going to see this continue to evolve, and that the question comes up is, what do ODs embrace versus what do they fight and combat? And there's certainly going to be things that ODs see as a threat. And but what I'm curious about your opinion, what do you see the opportunities lying ahead? Because again, we're going to see things change. You're going to see things like remote exams throughout several areas of medical care become more common, patients wearing wearable sensors, and a lot of other ways that we integrate telemedicine and remote medicine into the medical model. And there's going to be some overlap with eye care as well. Moving forward 5-10 years, is there any particular areas you see of this, if we can push aside the threats for a second, as opportunities?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be opportunity. I just, as long as we maintain that there's some kind of standard of care of that technology, that's what we always need to be reminiscent about. We always need to keep that in mind. But, let's say down the road when that comes into play, I really think that, there's going to be a point where we have to embrace that. We have to embrace that technology. How we embrace that, how, it all comes down to access of care as well. How we as a profession make sure that we are still that focal point of where all this technology goes. That's going to be the interesting thing. And I don't think anyone truly understands or knows where that's going to go. But this is the time where we need to really sit down and we need to look at, even other areas of healthcare, how they're doing it. Because it's just not eye care. It's all of healthcare that's dealing with this.
Yeah. Hey, Michael, thanks so much for taking a few minutes out of your evening. I speak for IDOC and the profession in general when I say thanks so much for your support and what you and your fellow ODs and colleagues are doing there in South Carolina.
We appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michael. Have a great evening.
You too.
Thanks.